Thank you, Chairman Tonko. And I agree. Today's we're going to be covering 3 bills in this today. And curiously, only 2 of which have had a hearing during this Congress. The Aqua Act will make significant changes to our drinking water laws. I know it's well intended, but I have some concerns with this bill. It removes primarily the cost benefit requirement and a small business system variance from the Safe Drinking Water Act. Now let's more down in the weeds. The cost benefit analysis is an important tool to evaluate the impacts of our policy choices when developing drinking water regulations. Cost benefit analysis. And the variances allow eligible systems serving small communities, 3,300 people or fewer, like many in my districts, to apply to the EPA to use treatment technologies that they can actually afford. Now, I intend to offer an amendment to this bill to ensure these 2 provisions are reconsidered to be part of the bill. The subcommittee also will consider the Low-Income Water Customer Assistance Program Act of 2021. This legislation will create a permanent rate assistance program for low-income water customers. And lastly, the subcommittee will be marking up the PFAS action that you referred to. We haven't had a hearing on this in 2 years. Mr. Chairman, nearly a quarter of our members are new to the committee and unaware of what has happened, what changes have occurred. The intent of this legislation is to do away with PFAS and treat it as a hazardous material. I understand that. That's why focus on what we're trying to do here. Do away with PFAS and treat it as a hazardous material. But the science on PFAS has evolved since our last hearing, over 2 years ago. And this is a non-scientific approach to deal with PFAS. The American Chemistry Council has stated PFAS, in its quote, is a large class of different chemicals, over 9,000, with different properties and characteristics. And each of them has a different hazard and risk profile. So I don't understand, Mr. Chairman, why we're dealing with a one-size-fits-all. It just quintessential Washington knowing best. Rather than dealing with the issues one at a time. And the EPA has made significant progress in advancing this since the bill passed the House last year. In fact, the EPA is moving forward with drinking water regulations, hazardous substance designation under the Superfund, and toxicity assessments for certain PFAS. The Congress has passed key bipartisan laws, like you referred to address PFAS, like requiring the Defense Department to stop using PFAS containing firefighting foams, and requiring the EPA to mandate that drinking water systems monitor for certain unregulated PFAS. And thirdly, requiring the EPA to restrict new uses of PFOA and PFAS. Even the Defense Department is voluntarily cleaning up their contaminated sites. So, Mr. Chairman, as I said earlier, our committee has yet to have EPA testify about what's taken place over the last 2 years. So I'm asking you, as we go forward, will you commit to working with us and holding a hearing with the EPA before this is put before the full committee or taken to the floor? Can we work together? You talked about that. Can we do that?
As we indicated, I think both parties have, through the course of time, recognized hearings that were held in the previous Congress and went forward with votes on the bill. So we'd still like to move this in subcommittee today.
And I'm okay with that. But I'm saying, and I'll be supporting you on PFAS. But I want to say, let's make sure that this is not a one-size-fits-all. So I'm asking if we could have a hearing and learn a little bit more about where the progress, where it is. Because if we're going to, let's focus on the big problem, PFAS in water, rather than the PFAS that's used in electronic equipment, in medical equipment. Let's be careful about how we proceed with it. So all I'm asking is, before now and when we bring this before the full committee, that we can have a hearing. That's all I'm asking is, can we try to have a hearing before this, before the full committee?
Yeah, well, Representative McKinley, I think, I hear where you're coming from, but also it's pretty well known that there, it's been some you know, there's been dragging along where we needed to really address PFAS because of its grave concern to our constituents. And, you know, I think the dragging of the feet just didn't help in this situation.
Well, I see my time's gone over. I'm still hoping if we could just have one week or 2 weeks to have a hearing. Mr. Chairman, you and I both know that would be beneficial as we go forward with this, because I want to see where EPA has moved ahead and where research is moving ahead to address the alternatives to using PFAS in other uses. We'll talk more about it during the amendment stage. So I look forward to this thoughtful markup, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Representative McKinley. The gentleman yields.